It's really wet and chilly here today. How's it look up there, Brandon and Charles?
It's
Not bad.
Charles, how you feeling, man? Better today?
Yeah, definitely better today.
Okay, thank goodness. Well, hopefully we can get through this with my signal being so terrible, and hopefully y'all's better. But anyways, that's what it is. So I've got a topic that I want to talk about today. Empathy. What's empathy? Who knows?
Doug, you're in and out.
Wants to know what empathy is.
When you can put yourself in somebody else's
Keep
position.
talking. I'm gonna find a better spot. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So empathy. What's empathy?
I know how you feel, and I felt
Yeah,
the
you
same way.
understand. Yep.
That wasn't really clear. How you feel? What?
I know how you feel, and I felt the same way. But what I found is,
Ah. Okay. Take that a little bit further.
further how?
Nate, you want to take it a little further?
It's just,
Apply to a situation.
let me think.
Yeah, Doug, my internet
This-
is slow here as well. It's really annoying, isn't it, when that happens?
Yeah. Sorry.
Well,
I
no,
would
that's
just say,
right.
I saw what you're doing, Charles.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I relate it more to like, the stress of the home buying process and having been there and done it several times. I get the challenges of trying to juggle everything. So you just have to bring it back to them and let them know that you've also been there, and it's not about necessarily, you just trying to get them to buy or sell, or you've done it before, and you've been in their shoes. So if they can relate or believe that you can relate to that, you'll gain their trust.
I think that's pretty good. Anybody else want to share anything?
I think it's easy to have empathy at first when you're dealing with somebody and you're helping somebody new, but it gets harder. The challenge gets harder when you're busy and you have a bunch of people and you have a bunch of problems and you're trying to deal with everyone, and it's harder sometimes, to kind of separate each client and know that even though you're dealing with 5 people with their heads on fire, you got to deal with one at a time. And sometimes for me, when I get stressed with too many, I got to always remember like each person, each situation is unique, and I can't let one stressful situation bleed into the next. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's a great example, Tiffany.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anybody else?
Or kids.
Well, I mean, kind of the caveat on that, like I sometimes have a bad habit, and my wife reels me in where, I'll have clients that are very, I don't know if they're new home buyers or just younger, but sometimes they'll be very needy, and it sometimes, drives me crazy in the patience. And that's, actually where I think Angela's like, hey, I mean, we did the same thing. And I have to like remind myself, like, okay, that's
I don't know
that's
anything
right.
either when I was 23 buying a house. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like, they ask questions that are right there. it's right there in the description. Like, just read the description. It drives me nuts, but at the same time, that's what we get paid for, is to be, like you said,
I
the
feel
counselor.
like I wish I could go back and watch myself buy homes in the past, because I have no how I acted or the questions I asked. And I feel like, honestly, I was probably a fantastic client because I was just like, okay, whatever, let's just get the house.
Yeah.
Oh, I was.
Whatever you say. Okay. Where do I sign?
Basically, you know.
I think it's
So-
easy. I think it's easy also to have empathy for sellers sometimes because maybe they're not in the best situation to sell their home, but they have to. And,
Definitely.
you feel the need to cut your commission because they're in a hard situation, but at the same time, you're providing for your family and paying your bills. So, I mean, that can get pretty tricky as well on the seller side.
100%. And I'm so glad that you brought up the seller side of it too, because we have to apply this to both sides of what we do, right? And it's very important to take that into consideration as well. I found a couple of things online just when this topic kind of popped up in my head over the weekend, and I found a few things that I kind of wanted to share if my computer and my internet will allow me to do it. Hopefully the screen's working now. Let's see. This is kind of the definition, and it really is about understanding and being aware of, being sensitive to, and also experience the feelings, thoughts of another, either the past or present, without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated. So it's kind of like you're understanding without them completely telling you, what it is. That's what empathy it is. It's all about taking context clues and really listening and paying attention to how they're reacting to things, not necessarily everything that they're saying. And let's see, the good thing about, I think, using empathy is, and that's really one of the things I want to focus on, is how it can make us better agents. Because by identifying needs and then making a connection with folks, it's going to help not just them, but also you feel more comfortable in the situation. Instead of worrying, you're going to be more creative in how to work through issues and overcome obstacles. It will allow you to collaborate not only with your client, but also maybe with the other agent to negotiate and get things done and work through those issues instead of being so focused on the problem and the emotion, that you're able to understand where everybody is coming from in the process and deal with it. And of course, this doesn't just apply to the clients, because there are a lot of people that are working as part of the process as well. And we can't just be clued into the client that we're working with. We have to be clued in to everybody else. And I think that's one thing that I know I struggle with a lot. And I think naturally it happens to everybody a lot, because we hold ourselves to really high standards as far as how we communicate and interact with other people. And when other people don't respond in kind, we get frustrated very quickly. I know I do. And honestly, I don't see anything wrong with that. You just have to use the energy the right way and not allow it to set a bad tone for how the whole thing is going to be played out just because other people aren't meeting our expectations. And I think that's really important, because we don't understand where they're coming from. We don't understand what they've been taught or the resources they've had or what their expectations are or what they're being held accountable to doing, not just by their client, but by the company they work for. And it's really important to go in with an open mind as far as that goes. And the reason I'm saying is, it's not to let them off the hook. It's to make it easier on you emotionally, so you don't get frustrated right from the outset. Can anybody relate to what I'm saying and understand why I'm talking about it?
Well, I think it's really important, especially when you're dealing with a listing agent, or if you're a listing agent, you're dealing with a buyer agent. You don't know what's going on in their personal life. So just because we're trained to where we're readily available, they may not be that way, but they may have something going on that you're not aware of. Also, especially with listing agents, sometimes their sellers may be instructing them, hey, we're not ready to make a decision right now, so you need to stall. And they're doing their job. And that's one thing I have to tell myself sometimes. I very much want to get an answer as quickly as possible, or I'll slap a time addendum on there if I think someone's kind of jerking me around. But if their seller is telling them we're not ready to make a decision, but don't say that yet, then they're actually doing a good job at what they're supposed to do to represent their seller. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that. And it doesn't do any good to blow up at the listing agent because I need them to want to work with me.
You're 100% right. And it's a lot easier to say that than do it, for sure, especially in the heat of the moment where you've got somebody who's ready to make a decision. They've made a decision. You've written it. You've sent it over. You've been very proactive. You've beaten everybody else to the table. You made a strong offer, and then cricket. Right? But so, you know, it is about understanding a full picture and empathizing with the situation. Not sympathy. Sympathy is different. Sympathy is more agreeing with it. Empathy is understanding. You don't necessarily have to agree, but you're understanding. You're taking their perspective into account. Okay? So who here has been in that situation where you've done that, submitted an offer, been completely frustrated, and then, oh, hey, now great, I list houses, and guess what my seller wants to do? First time we get an offer. Well, let's see if something else comes along. So, you know, how do you have that conversation with your folks? You have to be prepared to have that conversation with your folks because you need to go do a good job for them, right? But you also need to teach them some empathy. Hey, this is the right way to go about this. If you want to wait, that's fine. I'm going to tell them that you're going to wait until X to make a decision. But we're not just going to stall and not communicate with them because that's not fair. How would you feel if you've been looking for a house, you finally found it, you beat everybody to the table, got an offer in, and then crickets? So we need to let them know what our intentions are.
The other thing with that too, Doug, is I would throw it back on them and say, hey, listen, I mean, I'm a professional, and you know, it's just a rude thing to do, and the expectation is to say something back to them, and you know, I can't have my reputation, you know, tarnished by not doing the right thing and being professional. That I put that to them too.
If a listing
I haven't.
agent said that to me, I would do everything I could to not work with them. If you told me I was being unprofessional, I wouldn't take that the right way. Now, other people may disagree, but I wouldn't say that to somebody because I'd be afraid they would react the same way I did.
I think I understand the point you're trying to make, Nate. I think you got to be very careful you articulate that to your client, because your client's going to say, well, I don't care about your reputation. You're representing me. It just, I think it's just be very careful with your words. I think that's one of those things where you can set the expectation up front before you even get into that situation. Be like, hey, when we get an offer, we're going to communicate openly and actively and let the other party not know what's going on. We're not going to stall people out. We're not going to bide our time. We're going to tell them if we're planning to wait for more offers. And then that way, if you get in that situation, you can come back to it and be like, hey, remember when we said this? Well, this is what we're going to tell them. We appreciate your offer. We're not ready to accept or counter it yet. And here's why. Either we've got 4 other showings scheduled and we want to see how it plays out, or, you know, my clients just, they don't want to rush into a decision.
So
No
I wasn't
two
saying to
situations
say the client
so
was unprofessional.
Say that again.
I wasn't saying to tell the client that they're unprofessional.
Oh, I know you weren't, because it's not their job. I'm saying
Right.
I would be very careful using language like it's about my reputation, because your client isn't going to care about your reputation. I mean, that's somebody you know personally, but somebody you don't know from Adam probably isn't, because they're going to say, well, I didn't hire you to protect your reputation. I hired you to sell my house the way I want to sell it. So just be very
I guess I didn't
mindful.
phrase that properly, but I think you get what I'm saying. Like,
I do. I think it's just
there's
all
a way
about
to
being
say
fair.
like, that's just not the right thing to do. And you hired me because I'm a professional. So you have to have some trust in me in what I advise you. That's all I'm saying.
And I wanted to talk about why phrasing is so important, and just being very careful with how you say it. And I think with anything that we do, if you do a good job of setting the expectation before you get to that point, then when it's time to have that conversation, it won't be a big deal, because you have a reference point to go back to. And that's why all these upfront conversations that we have that a lot of other people don't have that go so much further in depth are so important, because stuff always comes up later. And I don't like you to have bad surprises. And you won't be really badly surprised if I've at least set the expectation that it could happen and this is how we're going to handle it if it does. That's why it's so important. That's why there's so much information in the buyer and seller packets. That's why we take an hour to go through it when we sit down with them and have these conversations. And it's not a 10-minute conversation. Hey, you want to sell a house? Okay, I can sell your house. Here, I'll put a sign in the yard. Where you want to list it for? Okay, sign here. Let's go. Boom. No. Same thing with buyer. Oh, you want to buy a house? Oh, are you approved? Okay, let's go do it. And then you're ready to make an offer. Oh, well, I don't have the money for due diligence and earnest money. You never say anything about that. I know you guys are doing that. I'm reinforcing why it's important that we do it and the whole expectation setting piece. Thoughts, other questions, anything? I think this little graphic sums it up really good, and I liked it because it was very simple. Empathy's in the middle. So you're taking their perspective, you're considering their emotion, holding your judgment. That's where the empathy ends up in the middle. Just be mindful of how you're interacting with people and always take an extra 10 seconds before you react, if you're inclined to react from an emotional standpoint. It's always better to breathe. Any other input on that? All right, this was the weirdest call we've ever had because he's been frozen pretty much the whole time. But I hope the discussion was good and that everybody got a little bit of something and was able to hear the whole thing for the most part. Thanks for everybody who was able to, well, I think everybody chimed in, so thanks for doing that. Anything else? Is anybody still there?
Yeah, we're here.
Here, Doug.
Okay.
I'm here.
Yeah, we're
All
here.
right. Cool. All right. Well, unless anybody has anything else, go be empathetic and have a great day. Okay. And I'll talk to some of you later.
All right, bye.
All right. Bye.